Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome if you are new. Thank you for taking time out of your day to check the video out. We have more PlayStation news, rumors, and leaks to go over and cover here today. So do me a big favor before we get into these topics. If you end up enjoying the video or finding it informative, be sure to leave it a like. Helps the videos out more than you know. And if you are new here to the channel, consider hitting that subscribe button as well. We're starting here with a pretty significant update for Gran Turismo 7. Reading from PlayStation Lifestyle, Gran Turismo 7 Update 1.31 has arrived for the popular racing game, and the new patch brings an exciting enhancement for PS5 users, 120Hz support. This eagerly awaited feature will enable you to experience smoother gameplay, provided you have a display capable of outputting 120 Hz. In addition to the 120Hz mode, this update also introduces variable refresh rate, or VRR support, which requires a compatible screen to fully enjoy its benefits. VRR technology helps reduce screen tearing and stuttering, delivering an even more immersive and visually pleasing gaming experience. Weighing around 2 GB for the PS5 version and approximately 3 GB for the PlayStation 4, the update is quite substantial, reflecting the numerous under-the-hood changes that players can look forward to exploring in the coming days. The update also adds new content and features and tweaks to the game's physics, new track layouts, and 5 new cars, ensuring a fresh and engaging experience for both seasoned players and newcomers alike. So a pretty significant update for Gran Turismo 7. Let me know if you plan to take advantage of any of these new features. Moving on from that though, Shuhei Yoshida wants to change the way indie developers perceive PlayStation. This is being reported by Push Square. Shuhei Yoshida is a decades-long video game industry veteran, serving as president of SIE Worldwide Studios through a crucial era in PlayStation history and occupying a special place of affection in the hearts of legions of fans. He was honored with a BAFTA Fellowship for his many achievements within the promotion of the gaming industry. Currently serves as head of Sony's Independent Developer Initiative, supporting indie devs as they bring their projects to life by making partnership and marketing deals a reality. But there is a perception that the PS5 is not as welcoming of an environment for indies as previous generations, something that we have talked about at length previously. In an interview with GamesIndustry.biz, Yoshida discussed the challenges involved in getting the message out and what he hopes to achieve in the future, stating, quote, "We're trying to change the perception of the challenge of developing and publishing games on PlayStation. It's a communication challenge we've been working on," end quote. This is being accomplished through something of a PR blitz, which Yoshida describes as, quote, "We've been doing conference tours, going to events, and doing talks and keynotes and things like that to send the message that we're open for developers to bring their games to PlayStation," end quote. The biggest issue that indie developers face is discoverability, which Yoshida acknowledges, noting that, quote, "There are so many great quality games that no one knows about. The challenge to get funded has always existed, but there's more and more money coming into the industry all the time. Digital storefronts can have unlimited numbers of games because they're digital, but there's only so much space at the front of the storefront," end quote. Subscription services like PS Plus could help with this issue, offering an alternative method of enticing players to take a chance on a title they otherwise wouldn't. Yoshida explains, quote, "People who have subscribed to the service already have access to all these games that are available, so there's a better chance for your game to be tried by people who never knew it existed," end quote. He continues by saying, quote, "So subscription services have a role to play in surfacing quality games to more people," end quote. So I thought this was worth sharing. Obviously, it's a really big deal to see Shuhei Yoshida get a BAFTA Fellowship. This is a huge deal. I don't know if you guys know like how big of a deal it is, but it's really cool to see that, and he definitely earned it. But it's also really cool to hear him talk about how important it is to PlayStation still to make sure that, you know, quality indies are getting the attention that they deserve. And so hopefully this just means, again, more quality indie titles being brought to the forefront. Pretty good stuff there. But moving on to the next set of topics, we're talking all about Final Fantasy 16. We have some great news for this upcoming PS5 exclusive. First up, we have the announcement that Final Fantasy 16 has officially gone gold well ahead of its release in June. This is something that was recently announced by the development team who's working on Final Fantasy 16. So great news there. But we're also hearing about how Final Fantasy 16 plans to take advantage of the Dualsense. This is being reported by WCCF Tech. Final Fantasy 16 will be using the power of the PlayStation 5 console to improve visual quality considerably and allow for explosive, fast-paced action RPG gameplay. But it will apparently be the DualSense controller that will allow the developers to do something they were never able to do before. In a new post on the official PlayStation blog, director Hiroshi Takai commented on how the DualSense controller features like adaptive triggers and haptic feedback will be used. Adaptive triggers will be used to return the feeling of effort and resistance when opening heavy doors, lifting up portcullis, and riding chocobos. Haptic feedback, on the other hand, will be used to produce subtle vibrations to create an enhanced feeling of presence during cutscenes. Sound effects in cutscenes have been turned into haptic data, letting the developer portray details that they were never able to before, such as movement of the air. All of this sounds incredibly interesting, and it's likely to make Final Fantasy XVI the most immersive entry in the series to date. So obviously, Final Fantasy XVI, it being a big PlayStation 5 exclusive, you know they're going to go above and beyond to take advantage of the DualSense. I think a lot of third-party multi-platform games have done a great job, but you can always tell that there's a slight difference between a game that has just been fully optimized to take advantage of all the PS5's features. Something with the DualSense, it just gets taken to another level, and I fully anticipate we're going to feel that and experience that with Final Fantasy 16. But it gets even better because apparently Final Fantasy 16 wouldn't be possible without the PS5. This is not me saying that. This is actually the director of Final Fantasy 16 saying it. Coming from Push Square, they say it sounds like Final Fantasy 16 director Hiroshi Takai has been left thoroughly impressed by the PS5. In a new interview over on the PlayStation blog, Takai talks about the advantages of developing for Sony's current-gen console, and although this isn't the first time we've seen such praise, his answers shed a little more light on what the team could do with its PS5 exclusive. The two main things that struck me were the size of the memory and the speed of the SSD. I've worked with a lot of different hardware over the years, and many have failed to strike the right balance between the capabilities of the hardware and the size of the memory, Takai explains. However, the PS5 is different. It comes with enough memory installed to take full advantage of the hardware. He continues, as for the SSD, as we are building the game, I was simply blown away by how fast it was. Now, obviously, this is an interview on the platform's official blog, and it's coming from a guy who's been working on a Sony-backed project for years. Of course, it's going to be positive. But Takai goes on into some additional detail with regards to development. According to the director, Final Fantasy XVI features some incredibly granular assets, both environmentally and with the character models, and all of these assets are given depth with high quality lighting effects. It's really resource intensive just to render these models on screen, and the lighting and shadow effects are then layered on top of that. We're only able to do this thanks to the size of the PS5's memory, says Takai. Clive, the protagonist of Final Fantasy XVI, can unleash a wide range of attacks, and the animations and effects for them can all fit in the memory too. And the way that the game seamlessly flows between resource-intensive gameplay to equally intensive cutscenes and back again wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for the speed of the SSD, he concludes. The article here concludes by saying that what we're taking away from Takai is that Final Fantasy XVI exists as it does because it's a PS5 exclusive. We already know, for example, that Sony had a hand in the game's development by having its own engineers assist with optimization. And so I have to admit, this is really cool to be hearing, right? We have heard many developers in the past praise the PS5 quite significantly, talking about how it's not just the sheer on-paper power and specifications that the PS5 offers, but the way it was constructed, the way it all works together, and how it basically complements, every aspect of the console to allow for minimal, if not zero, bottlenecks. And so I've been watching more Final Fantasy 16 gameplay, and the game does look incredible. And this is not the first time we're hearing from the Final Fantasy 16 development team where they're basically praising the PS5 and saying like, yeah, this thing is awesome, and they've seemingly really enjoyed developing for it and being able to take full advantage of it. And it's also worth noting that with the game going gold so early ahead of its official release in June, they did talk about how they've had plenty of time, and they're going to have plenty of time to fully polish this game and make sure it releases in the best possible state it can. And I think a lot of players are happy to hear that. Moving on to the final topic of the video, though, potentially very exciting one depending on whether or not you are willing to trust the source. We are getting another update on when Sony is planning to hold their next big PlayStation showcase, again being reported by Push Square. Aside from a handful of stated plays, we've barely heard a peep from Sony in almost 2 years. We know games like Marvel's Spider-Man 2 and Marvel's Wolverine are in development, but aside from vague comments about The Last of Us standalone multiplayer spin-off, we have no idea what the rest of its first-party teams are up to. In fact, the roadmap for PS5 is largely non-existent outside of third-party stuff, and that's without even touching on PlayStation VR 2. We're long overdue for some kind of presentation from the platform holder then, and it looks like it may not be far away. Giant Bomb's Jeff Grubb, who's notorious for largely reliable insider information, claims that there will be a proper PlayStation showcase prior to Jeff Keighley's Summer Game Fest, which is currently happening on June 8th. Obviously, that leaves a pretty large window from when the event could take place, but it's good to have a rough idea. Grubb has previously mentioned that Sony has been, quote, saving the good stuff, end quote, for the show, and given how uncharacteristically quiet the company's been, expectations will be sky high. There's chatter about this setting up, quote, phase 2, end quote, for the PS5's release schedule, so it should be much bigger than your average stated play. Of course, none of this is officially confirmed by Sony, so temper your expectations until it is. So, yeah, basically what we are learning now that E3 has officially been canceled, Jeff Grubb is updating us on this PlayStation showcase. There are two main things that I'm focused on. Number one, and most importantly, he is doubling down on this PlayStation showcase. We are at a point where a lot of people would have trouble even believing that Sony's going to do a showcase, which is understandable because they have went way too long without having a proper show. So I do not fault anybody for believing that Sony just simply isn't doing showcases anymore. But Jeff Grubb is essentially doubling down on this, making it clear that Sony is doing a big PlayStation showcase very soon. Now, what we gather from this is that this showcase is going to happen before June 8th. Now, does that mean it's going to happen this month during April? No, I don't think so. Does it mean it's going to happen in May? Actually, I think there's a fairly decent chance that it could happen towards the end of May. But I think the most likely time frame, and what I'm gathering from this, is that this to me confirms that PlayStation is planning to hold their showcase during the first week of June. And so I have to admit, this is going to put a lot of pressure on Summer Game Fest. There's a ton of pressure on Sony to absolutely deliver the goods right during this showcase, considering how long it's been since they've done one. Expectations, yes, will be sky high, and so it's going to be very interesting to see if they can actually, meet those expectations. But yeah, this is the update I have for you regarding the PlayStation Showcase, and I'm excited. Again, we do have to wait for official confirmation. I personally do believe this. It makes sense. We are at a point where Sony literally needs to start talking about what they're working on, because we don't know what's coming. People are going out there and buying PS5s by the millions, and they don't really know what's coming. So this is going to be necessary, and I'm hoping that Jeff Grubb can potentially provide us with a specific date or a week. That would be very helpful. Anyway, guys, that's going to do it for the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you found it informative. Leave it a like if you did. Subscribe if you're new. Hit the bell notification icon, and feel free to share the video out on top of all that. But until next time, guys, take care.